T100 Dubai, the culmination of the inaugural T100 Triathlon World Tour, and the grand final would crown the first ever T100 World Champion. The athletes have raced over 6 races so far, with their best 3 results counting towards the standings, plus their score from the grand final, which offers enhanced points for the end of season standings. Coming to the grand final in Dubai, the title looked like it was a fight between Taylor Knibb and Ashley Gentle. Knibb leads the way in the series on a perfect score of 105 after 3 straight wins in San Francisco, Ibiza and Las Vegas. And Ashley Gentle is 13 points back on 92 after wins in Singapore and London, but her third best result is only 4th in Ibiza. With the enhanced points in the grand final, only a top 2 finish would guarantee the win for Knibb, so even a small error could open the door for Gentle to take the title. And with athletes like Julie Derron, Flora Duffy and India Lee all fighting for the series podium, Knibb would be under pressure all day. There's huge amounts of money on the line, with the winner taking $210,000 from the series, with a $70,000 drop off to second, then a further $50,000 drop to the $90,000 purse for third place in the series. However, it's not just the title or the series podium that's up for grabs. Athletes can guarantee themselves a contract for the 2025 T100 World Tour by finishing in the top 10 of the standings. So athletes currently in the top 10 would be looking over their shoulder, while athletes on the outside like Duffy, Spivey, Jewett and Haug would all be looking to climb the ranks and secure that contract. The conditions in Dubai were looking brutal before the race, with the heat and humidity, and the course threw some new challenges at the athletes with the technicality on the bike, which could favour different athletes and limit the damage Knibb could cause in her strongest discipline. We've seen in short course the drama that can unfold in a grand final, and we saw straight away in this race something we haven't seen before. Taylor Knibb and Ashley Gentle lined up next to each other at the start, and Knibb looked to establish a gap early over the Australian, but Gentle was able to jump on her feet and make the front group for the first time this year. We saw in Ibiza the arrival of the Olympic athletes, and the absence of Lucy Charles-Barclay meant we saw more athletes in the front group. But this is the biggest group of women we've seen at the front of a swim in the T100 series, led by Sarah Perez-Sala, with Flora Duffy, Taylor Knibb, Taylor Spivey, Julie Derron, India Lee and Imogen Simmons and Ashley Gentle. Through the Aussie exit, this group contained all the main protagonists in the race for the series title, with the top 4 in the series all there, and Julie Derron, who can jump onto the podium with a big result. Perez-Sala continued to drive the pace over the second lap, but everyone was able to hang in the group, with the benefit you get from swimming on somebody's feet. This group put 100 seconds into the chasers, with Paula Finley coming out of the water with Marjolaine Pierre and Kate Curran, with the next group another minute back with the likes of Annie Howe, Kat Matthews and Lucy Byram. Through transition, Knibb opted to put on socks, which is her usual tactic. However, with Gentle and Derron both coming out of the water with her, putting on socks allowed them to get out ahead on the bike, and out of T1, Knibb was over 20 seconds down on Derron. I think a better tactical decision would have been to get through T1 as quickly as possible to break the elastic with Gentle and Derron. Maybe she didn't have socks in T2, or maybe she thought she'd be able to easily ride away from them on the straight over to the main bike loop. But out onto the bike, and it took Knibb 9k to catch the front of the race, forming a group with Julie Derron, Gentle and Simmons. And you'd expect her to normally just ride away from this group. But with the added technical nature, over the next 10k of the bike, she only managed to build a 20-second lead. Now the elastic had been snapped, how much time would she be able to put into her rivals? In the fight for the podium, Derron and Simmons were both looking good, while India Lee wasn't able to follow Knibb after losing a bit of time at the end of the swim and coming out of T1 at the back of the group. However, she did start to move up through the field, moving past Duffy and Sala, and in the race for a contract, Duffy in 6th would move into the top 10. There's a group of Byram, Phillip and Matthews are all fighting to stay in there, while Spivey, Haug and Jewett were all losing time on the bike and looking like they could miss out. Out front, Knibb continued to eke out her lead, but through halfway she only had stretched out to about a minute, and she'd lost 2 of her nutrition bottles on course, which in a race where there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line is an absolute nightmare. Would this come back to bite her on the run? Gentle and Darren continued to share the work in that chasing group, and it looked like Simmons was dangling on the back and she was having to ride with a bottle she picked up from an aid station and not dropped off in time. She was struggling to ride with it and then dropped it and got hit with a 30-second littering penalty, and this dropped her from that chasing group and brought her back a bit closer to India Lee. With Simmons in 4th and Lee in 5th, Lee would stay 3 points ahead of Simmons in the standings in the fight for the series podium, as long as Julie Darren didn't win. Simmons rallied and was able to bridge back to that Gentle and Darren group and actually took a small amount of time into Taylor Knibb. Would she move to the front of that group and help limit the damage, or sit at the back and recover? Further back, Lucy Byram was able to ride away from Paula Finley and started to close the gap to Indy Lee in 5th. Could she bridge up and cause more chaos in the race for the series podium? As Knibb comes into T2, you know she'll have a quick transition with her socks already on, and you wonder how hard she's had to work to build that margin. Was she saving something for the run, or has she played her card? She put in a huge move over the final 15k of the bike, adding another minute to her lead. Was she laying down the power, or were the chasers starting to fade? Gentle, Darren and Simmons came into T2 246 back, and you have to wonder the same. How hard did they ride early on to follow Knibb, and then how hard did they work to limit the damage? Remember, Taylor Knibb doesn't need to win if Gentle wins, she just has to be second, while if Julie Darren wins and Gentle's in second, Knibb can afford to be 4th. So if Knibb doesn't win, she'd be hoping Darren takes it. Further back, Lucy Byram was able to catch and overtake India Lee, which dropped Lee off the series podium in the live standings. So Lee would need to find something and rally on the run. Knibb was first out onto the run and looking strong. Darren was the quickest through transition of the chasers, opting for no socks, but she was quickly chased down and dropped by Ashley Gentle. A huge move by Gentle, however she needs Darren to catch Knibb as well. Can Ashley Gentle run close to 3 minutes into Taylor Knibb, apply the pressure and take the win? Through the first lap, Ashley Gentle took 28 seconds out of the American. With 6 laps to go, if she kept that up, she would chase down Knibb. Can she keep running that pace in this heat? In the battle for the series podium, Lee was still behind Byram on the run, meaning Imogen Simmons, who was running in 4th place, would make the final spot on the series. Even though they're tied on points, the finishing position in Dubai would be the tiebreaker. Can India Lee overtake Byram and get back on the series podium? She'd also need to hold off the charging Kat Matthews and Flora Duffy. Through the second lap of the run, Gentle took another 34 seconds, with the gap dropping to 148. However, even though Gentle might catch Knibb right at the end, Darren only took 15 seconds out of Knibb on that lap, which might not be enough to catch the American and help Gentle win the series. Simmons is still running strong in 4th with a comfortable buffer back to Byram in 5th, and with India Lee falling further back in 6th, Simmons seemed to have 1 step on the series podium. Through the 3rd lap, Gentle took another 31 seconds back, now sitting just 119 behind Knibb, looking like she'd catch at some point over the last 2 laps. Will one of them start to slow in these brutal conditions? Julie Darren was still chipping away at the deficit, but nowhere near at the same rate as Gentle. In the battle for a guaranteed contract, Duffy had run through from 10th to 6th, moving into the top 10 of the series and looking like she'd guarantee her slot for 2025. Her run has been so impressive in the series this year. Could she continue to run through and catch Byram and even Simmons? While Taylor Spivey, looking like she might miss out, stuck in 11th in the standings. Gentle continued to take time out of Knibb and got the deficit down to 50 seconds with 6k to go. But at this point, Knibb started to put time into Darren, solidifying her position at the top of the standings. And just as Ashley Gentle got within eyesight of Taylor Knibb, it seemed like her pace started to drop, and for the first time we saw Knibb increase the gap out, taking it from 50 seconds to 51 to 52, and looking like she'd be more comfortable over the closing stages of the run. Flora Duffy was continuing to motor through the field, overtaking Imogen Simmons running into 4th place, moving herself up into 5th overall in the series standings and bumping Simmons off the series podium, moving Julie Derron into 3rd overall in the series. The dynamics that were playing out all the way through the field were crazy. With just over a lap to go, Nib continued to put more time into Gentle as the Aussie began to fade and really started to suffer, and Nib was able to close out the final lap in style, taking her 4th win of the season, unbeaten in the T100 Triathlon World Tour, and becomes the first ever T100 World Champion. What an impressive race from the American, and what an impressive campaign to dominate the series. Gentle really started to suffer on that final lap, coming to a halt, allowing Julie Derron to run through into 2nd, taking 2nd for the 3rd straight race behind Taylor Knibb. Will she be Knibb's biggest rival next year? She takes 3rd overall in the series, which is crazy when you consider she's had one less race than everyone else, earning that huge $90,000 prize purse. Gentle takes 3rd in the grand final and 2nd overall, a valiant effort and made for the best race of the year, but she blew up towards the end and allowed Derron back into the race. Flora Duffy with the fastest run of the day, moving up from 10th to 4th, validating her hotshot selection, finishing 5th in the overall series and booking her slot for 2025. And Kat Matthews running up to 5th in the race to move into 4th in the overall series. What a crazy season for the Brit, and what a run to fight for every position in the series. What a crazy race to end the first T100 series. To wrap up, here is the top 10 of the standings, with these athletes guaranteeing themselves a contract for 2025. Lee, Simmons and Finley sliding back in the rankings after suffering a bit in the heat, but they did enough to hold their position in the top 10. This was my favourite race of the year, and I cannot wait for the series next year. It's been awesome to follow all year long. Bring on 2025.